You need to learn how to live in ambiguity and learn to embrace the uncertainty, because that's the reality. I say people seek clarity, and I finally am like, okay, yeah, every single coaching client I've worked with, what do you want? What do you want? And especially around kind of inflection points. I want clarity. I want clarity on what's next. My conclusion is you don't need clarity. You need to learn how to live in ambiguity.
Clarity is achievable only through choice and action. And that's the piece that people don't understand. Clarity doesn't come on the front end. Clarity comes on the other side. And so for me, it's both. Learning to exist in that ambiguity and still make decisions within it, to take actions within it, because then you get clarity.
I think I frustrate people because...
Welcome back to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here by now. Look, we like to have real, raw conversations with people who are having influence and impact in the world, whether they're well-known, not well-known. At the end of the day, if they can impact you, I want them here. And today we've got a really awesome guest with us. I had the chance to spend a few minutes with her on my other live show, and you can just tell the heart, the groundedness, and the clarity that existed in everything that she was saying. And not very surprising either, because Kathy Oneto is also the founder of Sustainable Ambition. She's got a show that she hosts, she's got a book that she released, and she works with organizations and individuals to ultimately allow themselves to get to a place where they truly can sustain what they want. Not hit the points of burnout, actually have connection, get joy, freedom, and fulfillment in the pursuit of what they're trying to within their work. And yet she does this in a way that pulls the human out, the truth out, and yet respects the boundaries around where those divides might exist. And so, Kathy, I'm super excited to have you here with us today, because I just know already the value that's going to come from this conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian. It's really a pleasure.
So I asked you a question similar to this before on the other show, and it's the only question I ask every guest on pretty much every show. Outside of however I've introduced you, the little bit that I know about you in our interactions, who are you in your words?
I love this question, and it's such a big question. And I went back to reflecting on this, and I still, in some respects, Brian, like stumble a little bit, because I think it's a really interesting question to ask people, and whether or not we actually articulate. So with that as preamble, I guess here's how I'll describe myself in some respects. First off, I'm a very highly curious person. I'm somebody who really values growth and learning. It's probably one of my top values and something that really guides how I have navigated life over the decades. And because of that, I'm also somebody who's a researcher, and I dig into things and can go down rabbit holes. And part of my doing that is I like to embrace complexity and kind of get into complexity and then find the patterns and the synthesis and kind of draw out insights. And really that's satisfying a lot. Again, it goes back to that satisfying my own curiosity. And, it's funny. My husband actually described me once. I'm a brand strategist in training, and we were doing analogies. I was having my team introduce themselves. And part of that exercise as team building was, pick a brand that represents you as a person. And I'm the one who gave the exercise, and yet I was struggling to come up with something. And so my husband often is the wise person around me who can give me insight. And he said, I think Altoids is a great, analogy for you, because, the curiously strong mint, like you're really curious, and, you also you're small, but you pack a punch, like I'm petite, but you're a little intense and serious, and, but you also really want to make a positive impact. And so I thought that was a great analogy, to kind of encapsulate some of what I've just shared.
I love that. The curiously strong mint. I can see that too. Yeah. It's one of those too that it's like, oh yeah, not like everybody knows how strong an Altoid is, and not everybody wants to take that on every time either, right? Like that's also probably part of your brilliance, is that the strength of your mint, though it's inviting for everyone, maybe not everybody wants to pop it into their mouth and explore that journey.
I would, in honesty, if I'm just honest about it, I think that's right. Like, I can be a little overwhelming for some people. Like, why are you talking to me about that? That's just too serious. Lighten it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I joke often, because of the size of my energy and how I can exist in spaces, that I'm best in bite-sized pieces for people. Like, that's just genuinely the truth. Like, very rarely does somebody want to sit down and have a 7-course meal of Brian Bogert, but like they'll have like a fun-sized pop me, like, candy bar anytime. But you had so much depth also in that answer, right? Like, which I really want to call attention to a couple things. Curiosity is obvious. Complexity is life. And I think that those who have the ability to explore the complex and then find ways to communicate the complex in simple ways, right, have superpowers. And I see that clearly as one of yours. It's obvious. But what you also talked about is you're the one who gave the exercise and yet you struggled with it. And I find that that's so true, whether it's for branding or marketing or sales or, a solopreneur or a coach or a speaker who doesn't know how to package themselves. Like, they may be brilliant at this, helping do it for everyone else. And yet when they turn it back on themselves, it may be more of a challenge. And that's really where I want to start. Like, you talk about it so vulnerably, you throw it out. It's like, yeah, I do this. And this is the case in your coaching and in the work that you've done in helping organizations and leading others and yourself. How often do you find that pattern to be true? And how have you, outside of your husband, which we'll address in another minute, found ways to close that gap within yourself or to have those that can reflect it back to you?
I love that you're picking up on this. I think this is so true for all of us. Honestly, we just get we're too close to ourselves, right? And I think what you're pulling through is the power of having certain friends who are able to do this for us. It's the power of working with a coach. Sometimes people don't believe in coaching. I kind of, I find that flabbergasting in some ways. And I'm not saying that everybody has to have a coach. I'm just saying there is a tremendous amount of power in having those outside of ourselves, reflect things back to us. We just don't see it all. And it's so helpful to have people listen to us, just as you're doing for me today, and pulling through threads and reflecting back to us, mirroring back to us what we don't see in ourselves. I think this is really one of the greatest gifts we can give people. And I don't think it happens enough for those of us. So you ask, like, well, how have I done this for myself? Because I think I've known this maybe, but I think there's a couple of things. One is, do you actually take time to pause and reflect and get metacognitive and actually think about, well, why do I believe what I believe? And why am I doing what I'm doing? And kind of challenge some of those norms or ways of thinking, I should say, and perhaps your norms. But then I do think there's a lot of power in, either getting other people's perspectives, both in terms of that could be like reading something that helps you challenge the way you're thinking, but also definitely having those relationships or people who are willing to listen to you and help pull through the threads, I think is really important.
So I agree. And on so many of the points that you hit on, and that's one of the few financial components that I do flex proudly in this stage of my life, is that in the last 13 years, I've invested about $900,000 in coaching for myself. And oh, by the way, it's paid off in a whole variety of ways. But to your point, this in working with the best, often those that are actually already performing at a high level, no matter what category in life you look at, almost all of the top performers in any category have at least one, if not multiple coaches. And I have yet in the last 13 years had any singular moment where I haven't had at least one coach for a variety of different things or reasons, right? Because I'm all about compressing time, and coaches help compress time, right? To clarity, to connection, to seeing things that we may not have otherwise. And yet not all of us as coaches who do the type of work that you and I do, or somewhat similar work that we do, necessarily wake up and decide that they're going to be there right out of the gate. And so take us back a little bit. What were the elements of your story early on that put you into a position where you started to better understand who you were, right? Your ability to see the complex and make it clear for others, right? The curiosity that led and drove so much of it. But maybe you did start out as a coach. I don't know, but like, help us understand the journey that got you to where you are today.
Yes. I mean, I think in some respects, I'm somebody who is wired to be self-reflective, for better or worse. I'm just a contemplative person, and I'm someone who has learned over time that I need a lot of time to myself. And by the way, that took somebody from outside of me to recognize that. It's kind of like I had that behavior pattern for decades, but it finally took somebody else outside of me to say, you actually need a lot of time to yourself and quiet time. Like, why are you like fizzing out right now? Like, and having a hard time because you haven't taken time for yourself. And that happens actually often still. Like, I'm way more aware of it, but I would say, what led me to this being part of my work today, I would say it's been a learning journey, but part of it is that I've worked with coaches ever since coming out of college. And so, and if I even go back, like I grew up a swimmer, I had a coach, obviously swimming. Yeah. And so in athletics but I have found value in both psychologists, being in therapy, being able to talk with people, having them reflect back to me, or working with coaches. And I see those as being two very different and important, distinct, capabilities. And honestly, I've worked with coaches over time, all throughout my adult life and in managing through my life and career. And so I saw the value in it. But I think I might have reflected this back when we were talking on Instagram that, one of the things I think I do this naturally because of my curiosity, but it's something that I have more recently, probably in reading one of David Brooks' recent books, and I'm going to get the name wrong if I try to get it, but the one on communication, and where he talks about this idea of being an illuminator of others. And how do you, in conversation, connect with others and really shine a light on them? And I think I'm aspiring to that more so even now. And I think I naturally did that with people when I was growing up, or not so much growing up, like as a young adult. And I had somebody reflect that back to me. So I was at a party. I was living in New York City at the time. I had a friend visiting from out of town. He was watching from afar. He was kind of ready to go. And I was finishing a conversation with somebody, and he was overhearing part of it. And as we left, he just said, "My gosh, you made that person feel so good about herself." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, I was just genuinely curious about and really admiring what she was up to and really interested in it. And I think, that's a component that I think has stayed with me over time, that I think has also led me to this kind of work, which is how do I help people see things that they might not be seeing for themselves, as well as how do I see them and honor them for who they are so they can really become more of who they want to be in the world. That's
beautiful. Kathy, do I have permission to reflect something back to you?
Sure.
Okay. I think feedback is permission based. So especially since it's in the nature of an interview, I want to make sure that I respect that even more so. It's interesting that you say you aspire to be more of an illuminator, because even in your own answer, you suggested that you've always been that, and you always have very naturally been that. And so what bubbled up for me is, I think what's really interesting is, I think even in your darker times for yourself, you've been able to illuminate others. And I would challenge that maybe what you're trying to explore now is how to allow yourself to always be the light bulb. Because with the light bulb, you have no shadow. If you are the light bulb, you have no shadow. And it's very easy to transfer that light to someone else. Whereas in some of your darker times, to transfer and illuminate someone else, it may be more of an energetic drain, but you've done it anyway. And so there's this part of you that I want to challenge you to really accept, as you already are that. And so maybe the shift here is not about how do you help illuminate others better, but how do you help illuminate yourself into the full place of ownership of who you are and the gift you already bring in every interaction.
Well, I appreciate that reflection back. I think there is definite truth in that, in my kind of claiming that or owning it and allowing it to be a part of who I am. I think the aspiration piece, and you might have some thoughts on this for me, that's why I'm going to share it, which is that I know I'm not perfect. I'm not this way always. And I think there's a bit of shame in that, in this idea that, I don't always show, like, I'll just admit, like yesterday, I was not having the best day, and it's silly. Like, I was experiencing, the train broke down. Okay. I had to change my plans. I lost an hour of my day, and I was walking back into a building and had this exchange with somebody where I'll just admit, even in that moment, I'm like, I did not have to show up that way in that interaction, right? And so it's those moments that when I say I aspire, it's like I can honor that I'm sometimes showing up this way, but my hope is I can more consistently show up that way in interactions.
So welcome to being human.
Yep.
Good job. Like, you're one of us. Good job. I fully appreciate every part of what you just said. However, what I would also suggest is that is a part of the process, and that's a part of your ability to be able to see it. The other side of it is instantly you had the awareness that you wanted to show up differently and better in that moment. And so really what that does and is ahead of for so many people is you've compressed the time from having an interaction that you didn't necessarily love or enjoy or didn't reflect who you want to be. And you saw it somewhat immediately versus maybe never seeing it at all, or having it being brought to your attention a while back. Now you have an ability to have another opportunity to reflect on, to grow from, to learn from. And yet I would almost imagine that even if you didn't show up exactly like you wanted, you probably didn't create any damage. You weren't probably rude. You probably weren't like, you just weren't shining light in a way that you were like, oh, I'm not loving on this person. You're just more transactional, which, by the way, cool. Cause you're probably not going to have every relationship or interaction ever not be somewhat transactional, depending, right? However, you compress time, right? Now you have the ability to, you're questioning to yourself, how do I get ahead of this so that I can identify when my energy is off and I can choose to go into that so that I'm active in it versus feeling like I did something that doesn't best represent me. You're just compressing more time. Again, it's not that you aren't already that, but guess what? I can't be the perfect coach and mirror for every single person in every single moment. It would be unrealistic. And I'll share with you, I had my daughter with me at a speaking event while I'm coaching people, did some heavy things this last weekend. She just turned 10. It was the first trip she's come on with me. Okay. But it also meant it was different because I didn't have that alone time to disappear after my talk. I didn't have that alone time, right? After I was doing some hot seats, some of which dealt with suicide and some heavy stuff that I'm helping people regulate. Well, I'm an empath. I feel it all. I've got to release it. She's an empath. So now I'm regulating her emotion that she's feeling off of me, right? Meaning I'm not getting any of that space. Okay. Now, largely every interaction through the whole weekend, super proud of, super great. But she would not stop fucking asking me about a scoop of ice cream. And this girl got every bit of dessert, everything she asked for, swimming, all these cotton candies. Like, we had a blast and she got it all. And guess what? It was at the very end of the event. We were tired. I was trying to finish up a conversation and she could feel my energy. We're getting the ice cream. I shut it down 15 minutes early. We're getting the ice cream. I shut it down and she looks at me and she goes, Dad, is everything okay? Now I look back on this interaction and I wish I could make it better, but I also know I didn't create damage, which I would have done 5 years ago. I would have reacted. She would have gotten my big man energy in a way that she didn't deserve. But I said to her point blank, Addison, you are picking up on this. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated with you right now because you've asked me this multiple times and I've asked you multiple times to just trust that you're going to get everything you need and want out of this trip. You've been amazing in your choices to like be quiet, to jump in. But like this last 2 hours, you've interrupted me 4 times in a 10-minute window while I was talking with somebody. And you're always going to get my attention first. So you get it every time, but then it makes it harder for me to come back and do what I need to do. And then you're still asking me about ice cream. So if I'm being honest with you, yeah, I'm frustrated right now, but you're also getting your ice cream because I'm not mad at you. I'm not upset. I'm not like you didn't do anything wrong, but I struggled with that. And I said, but we'll move on. We get the ice cream. We walk over. We drop the bags. We're waiting for an Uber. And I said, I'll be right back, sweetheart. I called my wife. I processed and released the extra energy that I was holding on to because I was yucky and I didn't want to carry it forward. Right. I told her what happened. I didn't create damage with my daughter, but like she could feel my energy. It was real. It was unfiltered, but it also wasn't damaging. Right. And then when I came back, we reconnected and we regrouped. I only share that story with you because like, okay, I could judge that one moment out of 3 days of beautiful interaction and experience that I didn't even feel frustration at all from her or anyone else. But it came out on the one person in that entire experience that I care about the most at the very end of it, right? I'm not perfect. Neither are you. But here's what I do know about you. If you ever create damage or if there's ever a gap that doesn't reflect you to your best of your ability, would you not follow up? Would you not go back and create repair even if you didn't think even if it wasn't created? Would you not find a way to close that gap? You always do that, I assume.
Do I always, if I'm honest? Probably not,
but with
honestly.
Those that are important.
But with those that are important, sure. And I have done it for sure. And I had to learn that early on in my career. You know, like I am not somebody who can play poker, right? Like I wear my emotions on my sleeve. And so, yes.
I can't fake that I like somebody.
Right. And so, you know, of course I've had to learn to be able to own when I mess up and go and clean things up. But you know what came up for me as I was listening to you and was so resonant was this notion that, you know, here I am striving for perfection and the reality of oftentimes it's in those conversations, like what a beautiful conversation you had with your daughter, where your relationship grows more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think about. Like when I think about my relationship with my husband, I'm like, thank gosh for the hard times, because that's actually when we grew even more, and our relationship and our commitment became deeper. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't allow for those times when it's a struggle, or where you fall on your face and you messed it up and you have to go clean it up, then where do you truly grow?
It's 100%. And so what I'm trying to suggest is you already see the pattern. You're already aware of it. You're already working on it, but it's also because you already are. Right. And so it's this connection to perfection that kills most of us, because it's a standard that's unattainable. And what is perfect anyway? Perfect to me is I'm going to do my best in every single situation to not create damage. But if I accidentally create damage or unconsciously create damage, perfection to me is going back and facilitating repair. Right? It's not just brushing it off like it didn't matter, not learning from it or growing from it, not closing the loop on a conversation. Right? It's perfection to me is my perfect practice to break the pattern. It's not the fact that I'm going to be perfect in execution every time. But that's also why it goes to the root of what I say to the world. It's one of the cores of our lessons is the world will 100% never judge you based on your intent. The world will only ever judge you based on what your words, actions, and behaviors communicate. And so if you're feeling misunderstood, not seen, not understood, like you're not getting the answers that you want, you aren't getting the outcomes you want, what is it about your words, actions, and behaviors that are communicating to the world that aren't congruent with what you believe you're communicating? And typically that's the gap that closes everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You're making me, what popped up in my head, and this may not be where you want me to go, so redirect me.
I don't have a predetermined path. So honestly, I love really natural conversation when it evolves this way. So it's great. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, you're just reminding me, hopefully my mom doesn't mind me outing her, but not that any of you will go look her up, I hope. But, I just recall like a time growing up where I swam growing up, as I may have just mentioned, and we were going to a swim meet, and my mom was driving myself and other people on the team to our meet. And we ended up having an interaction in the car that was not appropriate from my perspective. And I was a teen at the time, and I felt like I was disrespectful to my mom. And so I went up to her later and said, "Mom, I want to apologize for what I did in the car. I'm really sorry." And she said, "What are you talking about?" And she kind of dismissed it, and more from a standpoint of, I think, being conflict avoidance and perhaps just moving on. She grew up as one of 12 kids. She's probably like, whatever. I was the youngest of 5 kids. She's like, what are you talking about? This stuff is happening all the time. Yeah. But you just brought up for me, like, I think I did want to go own that and clean it up. Right. And there's so much of a gift for yourself in doing that. Like, I needed to feel better. And honestly, it's a gift when you allow other people to come clean things up with you. Right. And completely. I don't know if we're always open to that. Like, so I'm sure your daughter was open to that, and like being able to facilitate those conversations and create enough trust and safety in those conversations, I think is really important.
And I also reflect on the fact that it was literally 4 years ago, just less, 4.5 years ago, that I realized I had anger for the very first time in my life. Right? Like there's a lot in my story. And again, today's not about me, but like literally that's what I'm trying to highlight. Like I was really good at all these things. I was a really good dad. I was a really good husband. There were blind spots in how I was creating unintentional damage. Right? And so I look at it and say, am I still perfect there? No. But if I didn't have my wife that held me in a moment of truth, that allowed me the chance to have a really solid, real reflection that I could then choose to do with what to do, my daughter might be having a totally different experience with me today. And so am I perfect? No. Am I the dad that she deserves? I'm as good as I can be in this moment. And I'm working every day to become better before she's gone. Right? Like, because I do believe I'm the dad she deserves, but I also believe she deserves more than what I am able to give her today from me. Right? And so that's to me, the pursuit is it's being able to recognize. It's like the question that I've been asked a few times. And I think this will be meaningful for you because it puts a bow on this whole portion of this conversation. People have asked me questions like, Brian, do you believe you're self-actualized? And like the instinct in me, I already know the reaction. It's like, well, if you say that you're self-actualized, then you're arrogant and ego and you can't be and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, no, you really aren't aware. Or are you humble or is this coming from ego? Like all the chatter that can come around a loaded gun question like that. Like, what am I supposed to say? Right. But the first time I was asked that question and it just seemed the most truthful answer. And it's still how I answer questions similar to it today. It's like, well, I'm as self-actualized as I can be right now. Meaning I can tell you that to my conscious awareness, I've turned over every rock I've been able to see so far. And I can tell you that in every moment from this point forward, I'm going to choose to keep turning over those rocks because what's underneath them is where I find my freedom. Right? So am I as self-actualized as I'll be 5 minutes from now? No. I hope 5 minutes from now I'm better. Am I going to be the same as I will be 5 days from now, 5 months from now, 5 years from now? I hope not. Or I'm not living life the way I choose to live life. That means there's a bigger problem. But I can honestly and consciously say that I have done all the work that I can to see as much as I possibly can and recognize I still have things I'm working on. And there's still things I don't even know I need to work on. But as long as I can exist in truth around all that, I'm as self-actualized as I'm capable of being in this moment. But I hope there's more, right? Like, does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, otherwise, what's the point of living?
That's
I mean, and actually even living, like as a term, I should go look it up now. It's a definition, but isn't living to some degree, synonymous with growth?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the whole mastermind lesson that I gave right before this is the fact that life is all about contrast. And often our highest highs, our brightest brights are associated or in conjunction with some of our lowest lows or our darkest moments. Right? Both in how we've learned to grow and some of our current treasures and gifts, but like we could be crushing it in one area of life and we're just getting hammered in another area of life. Right? And it's all about how do we choose to see the bigger picture and recognize that all of it is contrast. All of it. That is what life is the constant game. It's not binary, right? And it's shading because otherwise there wouldn't be depth. Right? And so like when I look at all of these things, it's like, well, yep, all this is true, which makes it a choice more often than not. Right. And that's sometimes the difficult place is that's when people feel stuck. They feel like they don't have choice. And so I know you do this work and you've done a lot of this work. And so maybe that's where I want to maybe pivot for just a second is when did you realize your gift for complexity?
I feel like that was one of the things, again, that was reflected back to me. Again, I don't know if I would have picked up on that myself. Other than for people to, say to me, like, you can handle a lot of complexity. And
Can I interrupt you for 1 second, Kathy?
Sure.
Almost every question I've asked you around that, you give credit to somebody else. And here's the other side of it. Yep. They helped reflect it back to you, but you still had to see it and you still had to choose to do it. So what I'm suggesting here is please honor them in this portion of the story. But what I also want you to hear from this is it's like, you don't need to push away that you finally did see it or that you couldn't see it without someone else, because guess what? That means you're like every other human as well, because we can't see it all ourselves. But the point is when it was given to you, you chose to do something with it. And that's what most people can't do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm like, come on, Kathy, you're a badass. Like, own this.
No, that's okay. Well, it's funny because to your point, I really love the concept of polarities and paradoxes. And I think the thing that's also for me inherent in somebody who embraces complexity is that I can also sometimes, getting back to where we started the conversation, I can, as much as I think I do simplify for people, I can also sometimes be complex myself in how I'm presenting back information. And so it is an exercise of distillation, which I'm not always great at, to get to that simplicity. But I think it's partly because I like being mired in that complexity. And honestly, I really like it's happening right now because I'm finally having some space to kind of go and dig into some topics I've been curious about for some time. And I'm reading these different books and talking to different people and starting to see some threads. And it's not clear for me yet because I haven't had enough space and capacity to kind of spend with it to start to pull through the threads. But I really enjoy, I think I embrace it more now because I know that I like complexity, that I don't mind being able to kind of like dig into it all. I think sometimes I'll be honest, like I know I am a thorough, conscientious person. So sometimes I can go quite deep and I feel like the world doesn't like people who are overly thorough and deep. And yet it's just the way I'm wired. And I kind of need to do that. And yet I don't go deep in absolutely everything. but I say that just to say, like, I think I did see it. I think I do honor it now. I think I dig into it more now and allow myself to get into that complexity. And honestly, because I believe in polarities, like, I love to live in the gray. I think I frustrate people because it's not uncommon for sometimes people to ask me questions these days and be like, well, what's your opinion on this? I'm like, I don't know. Like, do I have to pick a side? I think there's complexities to this particular topic, or honestly, like, I have not thought about that enough, read enough about it. Like, I can give you an instinctual feeling, but like, I need more data and input to give you a true, honest perspective. And honestly, I'm probably going to give you the, like, well, here's the pros and the cons versus like one definitive answer.
Yeah. By the way, I often say the things that keep us divided is the fact that we live in a binary world that forces the black and gray, and the gift is almost always in the gray area. Not a surprise, too, that you and I found like a common point in the sense that many times you or I, and I would suggest, I'm going to only say this for the point of it, not to delve into it, is that that's probably part of the reason you and I don't delve in the topics around politics and religion, because there's too many nuances and complexities and too many people who, have such a firm opinion on something that likely is very surface level. Right. And yet when we have the ability to see something maybe in a different perspective or complexity without judgment, that's not how many are wired in our world. And so I often say that anything that lacks depth doesn't interest me. And that's just true. Like, it doesn't, like, I check out, I've got ADHD, I'm all over the place. And I'm like, cool. Like, you said some like really profound things in that answer though. And it's both in your joy in being mired in the complexity, as well as your ever consistent approach to figure out how to distill it even more simplistically. And so one of the questions that I'll ask you, and as you can tell, I don't pre-prepare questions. I just respond to the conversation in front of us. But I think this is something that many, I've witnessed many people struggle with. And maybe they don't have the same gift to complexity, but yet they still have the same pattern. It's going down the rabbit holes as you suggested, but not knowing when to come back out of the rabbit hole, or when to shift the path, or when they stop digging, or when they're just about to break through to the other side. You tracking where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. Okay. So for yourself, how have you learned not to get stuck in the complexity and to, for yourself, almost self-identify and self-regulate when you've had enough to know that you can make a decision, when you are just spinning down the same perseverative path, or when you need to redirect your energy? Like, how do you go about doing that for yourself? And knowing that in the work that you do with organizations and people, this is a pattern others face with too. So the second part of this is outside of however you do this for yourself, how do you identify this pattern and coach it out of others?
That's a great question.
Complex, like 4-part question. I knew you could track. Let's go.
Well, for me, I'll start with me, and then perhaps on the coaching side, take that second. But I think for me, this won't surprise you to some degree, that like, I think I have an intuitive sense of when I've gathered enough, but I'm also somebody who, as I think of myself as a strategist at this point in my career. That's just like, and that's a big term, like whatever. I mean, but it's just like, I'm a thinker, and and what I mean by strategist too is, I think in models or constructs, and I like to find ways to represent what I'm learning. And my brain is just wired to organize things. That's really what it is. And so for me, it's doing enough of that information gathering for me to then be able to start to create some constructs and kind of get it clear in my own mind. And once I get it clear in my own mind, I'm almost like, okay, I've satisfied my own curiosity. I can move on. But I think what's really important about what you asked was, how do you interrupt that? Because you are right that I can find myself in this place and others can as well. And I have to force myself to get out of the data gathering and actually force myself to start to create, I'll use the term prototypes because I do innovation work as well, or to start to frame some things, right, as initial hypotheses, to start to then orient and kind of say, where do I need to go find additional information now? to kind of hone those hypotheses. And so I do think it's an iterative approach. I think what helps is to make it an iterative approach and to kind of have hypotheses that guide the data gathering, and to make sure you're checking with yourself and pulling yourself out, having that practice of pulling yourself out. Even the innovation practice talks about when are you flaring and when are you focusing? And I think like bringing that naturally into your own processes can be helpful. And honestly, I think in my coaching, I think that's part of what I am helping people do. I think you are asking some deeper questions there, but I'm going to pause for a second before I go anywhere else.
No, there is a whole bunch that again can go deeper or stay more shallow depending on how you choose to respond, right? And that's okay. I think you said something very poignant though that I want to call attention to. You did very much acknowledge that you have this intuitive sense about you. And yet I sense that some of the divide is the gap between trusting your intuition and living into what your head has told you should be living into. And so if there's any truth to that, right, in this kind of process for you, how have you learned to listen to and trust your intuition? And when do you allow your intuition to take over your thinking?
Yeah. This is great. I'm going to go back in some respects, just in terms of to acknowledge and share. I find it interesting when I look back on my history that, if I were to reflect on myself as a child, I wouldn't have said that I was so in tune with who I was and like understood like my kind of personality and kind of the sense of who I am. And yet I actually think I did. But the reason I reflect on that is because there are times, and especially just because I'm a woman, when I see little girls who I just like feel like are so like in who they are as a young child, I'm like, I just love seeing that power. Yeah. And I get a little jealous of it. And now I reflect back, I'm like, I'm not sure if I was that way. But the reason I go back here is that I think early on, as I was stepping out into adulthood, moving on to college, etc., I think I was way more in tune with myself and using my intuition than as I stepped into kind of the adult world and started to have these external structures on me, influence me, and society influence me even more. And this is part of what I think about with sustainable ambition and my work. And I'm just going to be honest about this, which is this is a continual thing that even today, with all the work I've done, with what I talk about with sustainable ambition and aligning even more to who I am and what you want, et cetera, that is a constant kind of battle. And I'm getting more and more curious about it. Like, gosh, why is this? And part of it is because we're human, right? And we are influenced by these external struggles. But, today you had asked, partly like, how do I tune into that intuition and how do I know when? I mean, again, it goes back a little bit to the prior answer, which is I believe intuition is not just that instinctive nature is built on data and patterns over time.
Agree.
Yeah. And so, part of it is, again, like, have I gathered enough data and information? And then it is just kind of like, you got to let go and check in with your gut and kind of say like, what do I want now? And it depends what you're trying to decide for yourself or when you're tapping into that intuition. But, as the book says, your body knows more than our brain knows. So
yeah. So I am going to come back to the second part of that question because I think you answered the first part, but the second I think is important is, and you said it, but again, it's about the intentional choice.
Yes.
How do you create the environment or make it so that your intuition can overtake your thinking?
Yes. Thank you for the prompt because I was trying to remember what the second part was.
It's amazing. I remembered it, by the way. That meant it was meant to be asked because usually it comes out once and I'm like, I don't know what I just asked you.
I know. Yeah. I'm the same. So how do I create the environment or the experience to make sure that I allow for that intuition
so that your
to
intuition
come through?
Can take over your thinking? Because I think you and I both know in our, mammal meat suit bodies, right? Our brains take over, right? We go into that literal brain operation, which is shutting down intuition, connection, all of it. This pattern. And so that's where I'm trying to help understand is, both for yourself and maybe for others, how do you how do you shift that so that your intuition can lead instead of your thinking?
Yeah. I think it is, two things come to mind right now. I mean, one is the question that others will suggest to ask are things like, imagine you're waking up tomorrow, or wake up tomorrow and imagine you are just stepping into that decision and check in with how you feel.
Yeah.
And again, your body will let you know.
Instantly if you listen.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of like, is there resistance there? Or are you like, woo, here, all right, here we go. So that's one. The second is to get into your body. Like what I, wish I would do more because I know it, which is just go out for a run, Kathy. Because that is where the ideas are going to come from. That's when clarity is going to come. That is when I know, it's kind of, I'm in a space right now where I'm rethinking, okay, what's going to be next? And, oftentimes just like other people, I'll be like, I don't know. And then it's like, you go for a run and all these ideas pop into my head and, I capture them in a voice note and I'm like, that is your knowing. Just stop saying you don't know. So I think both of those are examples of how do you get into your body as opposed to staying in the mind.
So I think it's great examples. And I mean, what you also just described is what I call meditation in motion, right? Like it is your quiet space. I don't always say that quiet needs to happen in stillness, right? Some people it's facilitated elsewhere. Now, there's a whole lot of other things about endurance athletes and like burning off the edge and other stuff that like can start to dip into other components of it. But I do believe exactly what you said. If that's one of your mediums that you can go to and you get downloads, that's where you're connecting to the source, the universe, God, Allah, whatever term you use to identify with it, right? But that's where the clarity helps you kind of move. The contrast in this as well, though, that's interesting is I know because I've done it. I've trained as an endurance athlete. I've done a lot of things on the endurance side. I'm not even anywhere going to try to compare myself to you because you're a badass and you've done some really epic things already. But inevitably, this is where the contrast comes to how we live in everyday life versus how we perform as an endurance athlete. Because many times we don't want to listen to our body. We need to use our head to choose, right? To push through what our body's being like, dude, you're like at your limit. Nope, you got to stop like this. You're bonking, like you need more energy. And so the duality exists even in your own life. And so how have you seen the same type of pattern, whether it's flipped, consistent, totally different for you? How have you seen this idea of intuition versus thinking and head versus heart play out in your endurance athletics versus the way you choose to live the other components of your life?
I love this. So I'll offer what's coming into my head first, and then we'll see where else I may need to go. One of the things that comes up for me is the way that well, let me step back. This is again a time when sometimes people reflect things back to me and I'm kind of like, I wouldn't think about it that way. Like some people are just like, oh, you must be able to endure more pain than other people. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't really like pain. What I believe in is I put in the training and then I said, like, anytime I ran a marathon, I put in the training and then I just said, let my body take me.
Bingo.
And honestly, like my first marathon I ran, I don't say this to brag, like it totally shocked me. Like my sister had run a marathon. She had made it into Boston. I'm like, okay, you're fast. I'm not. Like we trained a little bit together and we started the race together. And I was like, okay, I'm going to, just go. Like, don't let me hold you back. And after the first couple miles, I was still with her. And I'm like, what am I doing? But I was letting my body take me.
Yeah.
And I ended up in that first marathon qualifying for Boston. That was not even my goal. And I just was like, I don't know. I just hope I finish, whatever. And I think that part of this, again, is, okay, you put in the work, like go gather the data or the information or what you need to experience, and then let your body take you. That's the corollary, I guess, to what we were talking about before. Does that answer your question, or where can I take it deeper now?
It does. It also makes a bunch of other questions pop up because I really appreciate how you answered that. I am very, very much a believer in doing the work, the preparation, and then allowing yourself to perform. It's even when you look at the highest level of athletes that make the millions in this world, whether it's basketball or baseball or anything, it's like, well, as soon as you're on the field, right? You just defer to let go. You get out of your head and everything else takes over, right? And what you're also suggesting, and what I like about this, is that I think most people go down the path of endurance athletes, and it really, this is where I was saying that burning the edge, and it's almost like the pain is the focus, which makes it the sole focus, which makes it the mental game to push through it, versus the recognition and ownership of the preparation that led into it and the surrender that you're ready and can just be in flow, right? It's even the difference of just allowing in life, allowing money, opportunity, relationships to come to us versus being shut off to it. And it's like, well, it's never going to come. It's never going to come. It's never going to come. It's kind of the same energy. And so in fact, what you're telling me is that you don't go into your head in your endurance athletes. You live largely in intuition, and you just allow. You let your body do what your body knows how to do because you've allowed it to prepare. And you surrender from the outcome, which is exactly what you do in the rest of your life. So there is no contrast. However, at the surface, it could seem like there is. And that's what I think is really cool. Because even in the way you described, most people are like, oh, you just have more tolerance for pain. You're like, well, yeah, but it's not as painful when you do the preparation.
The other thing, if I can add too, which may surprise people, but is also paying attention to your body, which is to think like, did I ever walk during some of my marathons or during some of my half Ironmans? Yeah, I did.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
You know, there's nothing wrong with that. And even like one of the half Ironmans, surprisingly, again, I didn't expect to place. And I even missed the award ceremony because I didn't expect to place. And so I walked up the hills because I felt the need to do that, and then ran down. And by the way, I beat the people who ran up the hills.
Yep. You know, because they burned their tank going up the most resistant part.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, even the beauty in what you just said though is great. And I want to just highlight this. Many people see a hill ahead of them and they are wanting to get it over with so quickly that they go into performance mode and they push, but then they burn whatever fuel they have in the tank. This isn't true for every athlete, but you and I both know for many amateur athletes, these things happen. They start too hot. They run up the hills. They don't train appropriately, right? But it's also why new race car drivers typically crash in the turns because they don't know how to modulate their speed in the turns. And that's where the races are won, right? The races aren't won on the straightaways for a marathon or an Ironman. They're won on the hills, typically, right? And I don't mean it in that the speed up the hill, you just said it. It's the energy consumption on that hill. And how does that pace out to the rest of the event? So you are actually giving a masterclass in all of this right now, because what you're also saying is it's like, no, I don't need to fight in the moments of resistance. I need to listen and allow myself to operate at a cadence that works for my body, given the amount of resistance I can tolerate, so that I have enough capacity on the tail end of this to do the other things I need. No different than how a professional or someone would go in and have all the pressure around a big sale and they could empty their tank completely and then go home and take it out on their family that night. Right? It's the same endurance element of life. It's how do I make sure that I'm honoring the moments of resistance so that when I can be in flow, I move as quickly as possible without any effort.
Yeah, I love this thread that you're pulling through. It's so true. And I think this is part of like how I think about sustainability. Like, am I being conscientious and thoughtful about my energy management and about my capacity? And yeah,
you're teaching what you teach right now. Yes.
Yes. You're making me think about, I'll just share one other example if it's okay, which is
Please.
when I hiked the Colorado Trail with a friend for 3 weeks. And, you know, I write about this in my book. It's the opening story where, you know, we had hiked for about 11 days. And by the way, I hadn't taken a shower for those 11 days. I'm actually kind of proud of that. And, and we came to
what we say in our house. You were stanky.
Yes, very much so. I was getting very frustrated because I actually thought I was smelling myself. My backpack is what was really smelly. I'm like, oh my God, I can't handle this anymore. And we literally caught to a fork in the road or the trail. And it was like, hey, you know, we could reassess where we are on this track. And if we go left, we can go to hot showers tonight. If we go right, we'll stay on the trail and, you know, it won't throw us off, etc. Well, we ended up deciding to go to those freaking hot showers. I'm like, no, we need to do that.
Yeah.
Or both of us decided that. And then we also decided to end the hike early. We were like, you know what? We're kind of done. Yeah. You know, we've done enough, and let's just go enjoy the last couple days in Denver and just kind of chill and enjoy running around the city. And those to me are like, it's okay to switch course,
Yes,
right?
it
And
is.
change course. It's okay to just enjoy the process and, change what the I still said I hiked the Colorado Trail for 3 weeks, even though, okay, maybe it was 19 days and not 21 days.
Okay.
Who cares?
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, be open to, did I get out of that experience what I wanted to have out of that experience? Yes, I did.
And the only way you could do both of those things if you allowed yourself to be present in the current moment instead of holding on to something that you had an ideal or a focus around, right? Like truly, that's the difference between pushing yourself to complete burnout versus having, to your point, sustained energy, ambition to build a business, build a life, do the things that we want. It's to recognize like you're always going to get what you need if you allow it. And if you're present in those moments and you also have a reflective, contemplative nature about you, you're going to learn and grow in every moment, and they all stack on each other over time. And guess what? Some are going to be great and some are going to kick you down to the ground and you're going to have to struggle to get back up. But again, it's what are you choosing in each one of those moments? And you're literally showing that you live your life as the example, as the model, that you are the perfect product that you sell to your clients, which creates congruence and it allows the adoption for that within them. And so I know we've talked a lot around a bunch of stuff that alludes to some of the work that you do, but I do want you to give some attention to that. Like if you had to talk about who you work with, how you help them, and what you can do to help others so that our audience knows where and how you can add value in their life beyond what you've already shared so much today with, how do you answer that question?
I think in a couple of ways. I'm going to come at it from this direction. Like one, yes, I work with people who are ambitious, but not at all costs, and are looking for ways to pursue what they want to have in their life, including their work, and pursue that in a sustainable manner. That's one thing that I would say. But I think another core distinction is really that I work with people going through inflection points where they are experiencing changes, where they're feeling angst around the choices that they have to make at this time. And part of that ends up being, honestly, the capacity side of it, that sustainability side, I feel is interwoven within all of this. But I think a core component of really what I hope for people and like to work with people on is to, again, you said it at the very beginning. I really appreciated how you synthesized my work, which is and characterized it. I do want people, my hope for people is that they find more joy and peace and ease in this journey. It can be so angst ridden. And, I've experienced that myself. I see it so much in others. And I think my hope is how do we embrace this journey with giving ourselves just a little bit more grace and enjoying the journey a little bit more? Because honestly, the journey is not going to change. Like, I say, like, people seek clarity. And I finally am like, okay, yeah, every single coaching client I've worked with, what do you want? What do you want? And especially around kind of inflection points. I want clarity. I want clarity on what's next. And my conclusion is like, you don't need clarity. You need to learn how to live in ambiguity and learn to embrace the uncertainty, because that's the reality. That is our reality. We need clarity in this moment.
Yeah.
To be able to take the next step. But if we continuously search for just that clarity, always, like, I know exactly, like, and imagine, I know exactly how my life is going to play out. Like, no one would read that book. How boring, right?
So I want to jump on this and double down on even what you just said, because I think there's a yes and opportunity here. Okay. By the way, I love that you use the word inflection points. I use that word often in the work that I do, and I really appreciate it, but I don't hear that word very often. Very few people use the inflection point, and it caught my attention on a whole variety of ways, because I see lots of connecting dots to it. I love that. I often talk around that we can choose the change we want, or we can choose to change when we don't want change. Right. But like, we know that if change is the constant, then like, are we in the driver's seat making those active choices, or are we in the passenger seat and they're happening to us and we can't escape it? I agree with you on clarity, and I agree with you on ambiguity. Here's what I shift through. Ambiguity only comes until we take an action. Right. And I always say clarity comes in two ways: challenge or confirmation. right? You may have an idea, a hope, a desire. You may want to be with somebody in a relationship. You may want to make this sale. You may not. But until you take the action necessary to test it in the universe, you can't hold on to this ideal in a future state until the associated action is taken, right? And so clarity is just on the other side of making a choice and taking an action. And so when I work with people who are seeking clarity, it's like you're mostly clear on what you think you want. You need to get comfortable in being unclear until you choose to take an action, because that will give you the feedback instantly that tells you you're either on track or you're off track, or do I need to recalibrate, or what do I need to do? Clarity is achievable only through choice and action. And that's the piece that people don't understand. Clarity doesn't come on the front end. Just like being reflected something back to you clearly from a coach or your husband or someone else. You are not clear on something until it's reflected back to you. And then you're like, oh, now I see it. Clarity comes on the other side. Clarity doesn't come on the front end, right? And so for me, it's both. It's, yes, learning to exist in that ambiguity and still make decisions within it, to take actions within it, because then you get clarity.
Totally. If people are watching this, they're seeing me frantically head nodding through this. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you just shared. And I think, yeah, we don't know until we get action. Until we take action. And then we have that feedback.
Yep.
And I think that part of what we're looking for is, where are we finding that resonance? Where are we finding that congruence? And the other part of this is that people are going through life, not on autopilot and not paying attention oftentimes. And I know those words, when I use them, they can kind of sound a little triggering, or like trying to blame people or something, or point a finger. I'm not. I mean, I'm just saying, be aware of what's around you. Pay attention to, again, what is your body telling you? And, pay attention to that resonance, because it's often so subtle.
It is.
And if we're not paying attention, we do miss it.
But that's also why I call attention to say that clarity comes through challenge or confirmation, because it's that resonance, right? It's, I just quit my job and I had an oh shit moment, or I felt a ton of relief, right? Either way is giving you clarity around the decision that you made. And it was either closer to or further away from who you want to be and what you want, right? But that's where we have to listen, is in that moment after the action. Are we getting the feedback and the resonance that we desire, or do we need to recalibrate? Because that's life. That is life. Because it's always going to be coming at us. And if we stop making choices, we stop getting clarity.
And we give up our agency.
Bingo. Kathy, I'm so happy you decided to play with me today, because you truly are awesome. I feel such a resonance with you, and there's so much depth. And I think there's some other cool things that we can do to kind of take this conversation further. So I'm sure we will do that. But as we wrap, because I want to be cognizant of your time today as well and all that you've given, is there a closing thought that you want to leave our audience with today?
I think I'll end here, which is to embrace your humanity and give yourself grace.
Beautifully said, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for those of you that watched Kathy flip open her lid and jump in, she also flipped open that lid multiple times through the conversation. She had stories and different things that she was revisiting that were allowing her to see how those patterns got created and produced in her life. And she chose many times through reflection or through her own awareness and observation how she wanted to live. But it was that curious nature that drove every single thing that allowed her to recognize that the complexity of life is also where the gift is. It's also where her gift is. And so sometimes we don't see our purpose, we don't see our path, and we don't see our clarity until we allow ourselves to be open enough to see it. But it is there. And if you want to be sustainable in your efforts and your energy and your ambition, if you want to be sustainable with the relationships, the time, and the freedom within your life, this is a never-ending process of just constant asking those questions and putting yourself in the position to see honestly and choose. That's what she did for us today. And that's what you're capable of doing if you choose to flip open your lid and scan your can. See you next time. What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is, if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.